Okay, we're live.
Hello, this is a regular meeting for the City of Helotes Economic Development Corporation Board of Directors. It's July 15th and we are beginning at 7 o'clock on the nose, so I'm going to go ahead and call to order. We're going to go through roll call. We do have two of the directors that are on conference call, so we'll hear them, but we won't see them in this call to order. So starting from my right, going around, John.
John Kudowski. Nathan McCrossin.
Blaine Lopez.
Catherine Mitchell.
Stevie and
Long Lane.
okay.
Oh, Stevie Side.
Okay. So we have all present and accounted for, so we can go ahead and begin the open session. So the open session, we're going to begin with citizens to be heard. We cannot discuss any presented issue nor any action be taken in the issue at this time. Comments are limited to 3 minutes, and at this time is not transferable. Discussion by the EDC of any item not on the agenda shall be limited to statements of specific factual information, either response to inquiry or recitation of existing policy response to the inquiry, or a proposal to take the item for future agendas. So, do we have any citizens be here to sign up?
No one's in it.
All right. So, with no one signed up, I'm going to go ahead and close the open session. So next, we're going to go to the consent agenda items. So all consent agenda items listed below are considered routine by EDC staff and are intended to be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless the director requests it, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. So before I begin, do we have anybody that wants to first pull items 3 or 4 from the consent agenda? Okay. So with that, I'll go ahead and just recite what the items are in the agenda, and I'll entertain a motion for approval. So number 3 is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting dated June 17th, 2020. And number 4 is approval of the EDC fiscal year ending 2020 revenue and expense report dated July 9th, 2020. I have a motion for approval.
A motion to approve items 3 and 4 is written.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those against, same sign. Motion passes. So now we're going to leave the consent agenda. We're going to go to items for individual consideration. So as we go through these items, we'll actually have a motion to discuss if discussion is necessary, or you can go to straight for a motion of approval if you don't feel like discussion is necessary. So with that, we'll go to item number 5, presentation by Armstrong, Vaughn and Associates and discussion of an action on the EDC fiscal year ending 2019 comprehensive annual financial report.
Good evening, board members. I apologize. This is definitely a different year. We're used to presenting this information obviously much earlier, but certainly under the circumstances, I'm just happy to get to be here with you this evening to at least go over the audit from last September 30th, 2019. Just so you are aware, the audit was obviously completed much earlier than now. In fact, our audit report was actually dated February 14th of 2020. So also just be aware that anything that may have transpired since then would not necessarily be reflected within this audit report. So that's the reason why I want to point that date out. First and foremost, I have to say thank you to the staff. Everyone here at the city is always so accommodating and helpful in doing the audit for the city, and that includes the audit for the EDC as well. You guys are never an afterthought, but just always an additional thought within those 2 audits that we perform. So I believe you've got your actual audit reports in there in front of you. I'm just going to hit over some highlights and also be available for any questions that you may have that I can hopefully answer for you. We did issue what's called an unmodified opinion. That's the best that we can give on the audit report. A couple of points that I wanted to add from the loose letter that hopefully is still included within the round reports there. This particular letter is our required communications that we share each year with both yourselves, the board members, as well as with management. And so for your letter specifically for the EDC, you'll see there was no direct recommendations for the EDC alone. We did have a recommendation that was included within the city's letter, but that was simply just to continue to monitor and watch the policy to make sure that it was adhered to for the city's procurement card policy. So while certainly, ripple effects out to the EDC. It was not isolated to just, EDC charges. I did also want to mention to you in that particular letter, we also refer to whether or not the city and the corporation are in compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act. We found no, lack of compliance with one exception, simply due to the timing of the former city administrator leaving, as well as there is some training that has to be obtained by all investment officers. So there was a little bit of a lapse in training time, but I know that since then, City Treasurer Tabby Dorr has obviously registered and probably now has had a chance to take, unless situations have precluded her from doing so, but that training. And there's certainly some grace periods within that training period, so we didn't feel that that was a significant lack of compliance, but just something to make you aware of, and certainly to bring to the attention of those who have now worked to obtain. If you'll turn now to your reports, starting on page 8. I apologize for those listening. I don't recall the electronic page. That's hard copy page 8. And just for those that may not be familiar with our audit reports, we're actually required to give 2 types of presentations. For the EDC, there's not a whole lot of change from one presentation to the next. The first one is actually on the full accrual. That's the one I've skipped over. All it really does is it adds on any long-term assets and long-term liabilities that the corporation may have, and y'all obviously got very few, very limited items there. So that's why I've had you turn here to page 8. This is more of your current or modified cash basis of accounting. So you'll notice there that we do comparative years so that you can kind of get a feel from one year to the next. So you can see there that your total assets had increased from 1.1 million to 1.4 million. But of course, as always, the majority of that is made up of your cash and your cash investments. The receivable there is simply because the state, as you may well know, is technically 2 months in arrears on their payments to you all for the sales tax. So that was certainly collectible, not any problem receiving those funds, it's just merely a timing issue there. Looking down below there, you'll see that you had total liabilities, and the majority of which are the accrued liabilities. That represents the quarter ended for 9/30/19, the 380 agreement that's with Texas Developer. You certainly have to return some of the sales tax, or some of the funds collected through sales tax has to be remitted back to them. So that is what those accrued liabilities are, both 9/30/18 as well as 9/30/19. But overall, after all your liabilities, you can see there that you have a very healthy fund balance. At 9/30/18, it was $950,000. At 9/30/19, it had increased up to 1.3 million. So very healthy position. Any questions on any of that? Okay, well, turning over to page 9. One item that might look a little bit different from the reports that you received internally from the city compared to this particular, oh, I'm sorry, you know what, actually, keep on going down. There you go, there was page 8. One more down. There's page 9. But one presentation issue that might be a little bit different from what you're used to seeing internally is that our particular reports here show the sales tax figures as reduced by the 380 agreement payments to any entities that you would have those agreements with. Of course, the majority of what you all have to pay out would be to Texas Developer. So overall, looking here, you can see that your revenues increased from the prior year from 833 up to 937,000. Again, that's already reduced by the payments made with the 380 agreement. So that is just the corporation's collections or what they get to keep from the sales tax. This particular number was a positive variance to your final budget of 130,000. If you want to see more of your budget comparison, that's later on in the report, but the risk of making you flip a bunch of pages, I just figured I'd mention those figures to you. Looking down below there, you can see your expenditures actually decreased from the prior year, and your expenditures also were below your budget by about 312,000. Now, the majority of the reason why your expenditures actually came in below your budget was because there was a large budgeted item for capital outlay. Specifically, it was for land acquisition, and there was no actual actual cost that was associated with that from the budget. So that was the main reason for that variance. Then below that, you can see that you do have the transfers to the primary government. Of course, that represents your transfers to the city. The majority of that is made up of your required pledged revenues that go towards the city and help or in support of the previous certificates of obligation that had been issued where the EDC made those pledged commitments to help pay for those debt payments. But after all of that, you can see that you had a healthy change in fund balance of $341,000, which represents that increase we saw on the previous page. Any questions on any of that? Well, the following pages after that are really just our footnotes and just additional information, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions you may have, but of course, as I'm sure y'all are aware, your reports are pretty short and sweet compared to the numerous pages that some of the city reports that we have going to here.
Okay. A lot of information.
A lot of fun to do and put together.
Yes. So, does anybody want to make a motion to discuss? If we just have any questions at all, we just kind of wanted to get out there.
I'll motion to discuss and approve the item as presented.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right. So we got a motion to second. If anybody's got any discussion questions, again, there's a lot of information. I think it was presented well overall. I think it was positive, obviously, with the net assets going up and the fund balance going up is always a good thing on the business side of things. So I have one quick question. In this, and this took into pledges, so this included the recent pledges, I guess, we also made for the sidewalk improvements? No. That's not included after?
That's fiscal year, this year, this
Okay.
fiscal year, and so you'll see that on my presentation.
Okay, perfect. All right, that's the only question I had. All right, so with no further discussion, we have a motion for approval, so in a second, so all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay,
Aye.
all those against say nay, so the motion passes. All right.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
It's hot out there.
All right, so with that, we move on to item number 6, discussion of and direction on utilizing funds from the EDC operating budget to contribute to city events that promote local businesses as permitted under Texas Local Government Code 380.001, economic development programs in section 505.103, limitation use, revenues for promotional purposes, and so we have a presentation by Mary Mendoza.
So, as you know, on June 18th, the Board of Directors directed staff to review the eligible city events that can be funded through the EDC during this fiscal year, and in any future fiscal years. So as we reviewed it, we have 26 events that is determined, and out of those, the 12 marketplace events, the Carnival Parade, and the Christmas Parade are eligible events that meet the criteria under this Texas Local Government Code. These 3 events bring hundreds of people into the city that shop local businesses, and that's why it's an eligible event. Due to COVID-19, though, restrictions placed upon Texas cities, the city of Helotes has not been able to hold several big annual events, including some marketplace events, which was in May, June, and July, the Carnival Parade and the Carnival Parade. So staff is recommending that this funding of these events be placed in next year's budget and not do a budget adjustment this year, because we don't know when we're going to be able to start. So we have only 2 more marketplace, and that's August and September. And at this point, it doesn't look like August might happen. We don't know yet until we get the executive order that's supposed to come out today from the county, because it expires in June. And at that point, we can't have events it's supposed to be, this governor county says 100, so we're kind of back and forth. Either way, we have more than that many people. So, the total funding though for Marketplace, Carnival Parade, and Christmas Parade is a total of $63,437.64. That's an estimated funding amount for supplies, bailiffs, and event assistants that are needed. We did not include any full-time city staffing, for this, and that will come out of the operating budget, because we do have other staffing that help with this, but we did not include it in the budget. We felt that that could come out of our operation expense through the city. So the, attachment A shows the breakdown of each one of those, budgeted events. What it includes is, of course, these are estimates, but at Marketplace, it's about 41,000, not including the full-time staff, which is the public works staff, health inspectors, Marketplace coordinator, or the PR specialist. In the Carnival Parade, it's 17,000, and again, it does not include PR specialists, public works staff, the police officers, and other staff to run this. This is a huge event, so it's basically every staff member is involved in that. And the third one is the Christmas Parade, and that's about 5,000. It's not as big as the Carnival, and it does not include, again, the PR specialists, public works staff, the officers, and other staff.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion for discussion and approval, or discussion and, a motion for discussion, and I guess whatever, motion you want to put behind that. I do have some questions myself, so I'd be happy to discuss myself.
I'll motion for a discussion on, item number 6.
Okay, so we have a motion for discussion, we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so let's, I guess, ask the questions, and if you don't mind, I'll just try to just make sure I'm clear on all this. So, in the current budget that we have for the remaining fiscal 2019, we still have, I guess, planned expenditures that we have in there that can cover it if there's.
Correct.
Okay, and what we're basically saying is let's just repeat that budget again for next year.
Correct.
From October moving forward, even though we may not actually encounter those expenses, but they'll, at least they'll be budgeted.
Right, so if
Okay.
we do start having it, we'll have it in October, we'll have the funds there for October. If we don't, then those, just like you saw in fiscal year 19, you don't use that expense, then it stays within the budget and your, it decreases your expense.
Okay, perfect, that answers my question.
Okay, I got a few. Just to confirm, so you're saying that the city staff is gonna come out of the city operating budget?
Correct.
Okay, cool. Specifically on, attachment A, Helotes Marketplace, there is website maintenance, ESD monthly charges for 608 times 12, I'm assuming that means monthly, or?
Yeah, that's 608 monthly, because we have a separate page website for the Marketplace where vendors come sign up and they pay. So we keep track of all the payments, and so it's not just a marketing website, it's actually I don't even know what it's called, but basically where the vendors that want to, that's how they sign up for
Okay.
the spot, and that's how they pay, is through that. So there's a lot of back end maintenance on that website, to make sure credit card information, check information, stuff like that is secure.
Oh, alright. And then, going off of, the city council meetings, and y'all talking about the different expenses that you're looking to get reimbursed through the FEMA funding. Do you think if we're gonna pledge money towards this, that next year, with the worst case scenario, that we have some sort of stipulations on how we run these events that require extra resources that the city's currently consuming for sanitation, and employees and all that, the 63 and some change is adequate, or, is there a way to coordinate and get let's say we need an extra 10 grand for all the events because we need, at the time, let's say, we gotta hand out free masks or something crazy like that we can't foresee right now.
You can add that on there, in the proposed budget, like I said, I assume because of the direction I got, I put that in there, but that's, like I said, it's just a workshop that we're going with, but you can make that direction now, and then when we present I'll show you where we'll adjust that, what that total marketing is.
Okay.
And we do have some, so what you can do is that line item cannot be more than 10% of the estimated revenues that you're estimating to receiving for the year. We're estimating the same revenues as we did this year, which is 1.4, so it's 140,000. The line item right now is 93, so we do have room to add if we want to, as just an extra, like you said, maybe we need to pass out masks, maybe there needs to be other health protocols that we didn't include here. So yes, you can allocate that and give us direction now, and then when we come and bring the final presentation of the budget, it will have that amount added to it.
I'm good.
Stevie or Ron, do you have any questions regarding a specific item?
Quite frankly, this has such a direct impact, very positive impact on our merchants. And also, these events bring in extra sales tax for us. I'm just all in favor of it, but I agree. I think that we should add an additional $10,000 just for the planned overages.
So Marianne, if we wanted to make that adjustment to the budget, does that happen now or does that happen
You're
now?
giving me direction now, because this is not a quote regular action item of approval, it's just direction because it goes into our budget. So you're giving me direction, so when I present the budget, I'll show you the line item that will change and increase when I do the PowerPoint presentation for the budget. And that's why we put this item before the budget, because
Yeah.
it is a budget workshop and that some of that affected what our bottom line of our budget is.
And when we can get to the later items in the actual budget, then we can just kind of have that 10,000 sit in our lines,
Correct.
of it being an extra expenditure. Okay, so since this is just direction, do we actually have to take, there's no really approval
No.
on this, right?
There's no action.
We
You
just discuss and, give direction. How do we figure out if we're all on the same page about that direction though?
You can just ask each one of them, say yay if you're, you're not actually approving anything, but you can still
Right.
take a vote
Make
in
sure
that.
everybody's, because I don't want to give the direction without having everybody say, yeah, I'm good with it.
Right, so you would just say, as per the direction of this 63, adding the 10,000 for these events within the EDC marketing, line item, who is in favor of that, direction.
Right. Okay, so why don't we just kind of go around, table around it, and just everybody kind of say, yay or nay, or whether they're okay with the additional $10,000 for the events.
I'm in complete support of it. I think Stevie is 100% right. This is an investment into our community, which pays us back dividends. So, and I agree that, especially currently with the uncertainty of everything, an extra 10K is a good idea to have in the back pocket.
Yeah. Okay, and obviously we know where Matthew is.
I'll caveat that. I just threw 10 grand out there as a number. If we got that up to 15%, you said, or?
You can do up to 140 basically, and I think we have 93 right now, is the amount that's budgeted. Look at my card.
So I think for direction, I would be very comfortable with if staff went back, because they're going through a lot of hoops with the county
Mm-hmm.
and all the requirements, for their state of disaster. Have like a scenario of, this is, the least estimate, and I'm just throwing 10K out based on.
So we could
those
actually
discussions.
change that total, it's right now 93.5, so you could just say caveat 100 up to 140,000, because it can't be more than 10% of our estimated revenue, which is
Yeah.
1.4.
And we obviously have the funds for that, and next year's gonna be rough, so I'm all in favor of giving, guidance of the random number I threw out, all the way up to the 15% to help them out.
So you've already did the math real fast.
Yeah, I've looked at this PDF, like, it's a long
It's a
PDF,
long
it was
one.
like 73 pages.
Yeah.
There was a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot of coffee, so.
Okay, well, good. I'm in favor of that as well. I think it's good direction. I like having some flexibility in there. And again, it's like any budget item, we can put it in there, although we just need to be careful that we go through the exercise of, if it's in there, I gotta spend it, it's more of a, it's in there, and if we need it, at least we have it.
Yeah, and every expense that we send out, like, you know, because our finance director
Hey, Blaine, this is Ron Lane.
Go ahead, Ron.
It's Blaine.
Yes, sir.
My question is on the approval of the additional $10,000. Will that be established as a discretionary fund? And if so, how is that money requested under the discretionary fund?
It wouldn't be discretionary funds, we put it in the marketing, so it has to go back and affect that. It has to show that it's promoting, it has to show that it is being used for those 3 events. You know, if we're upping that 63 to cover that difference of that, which is I think 47,000, so the total amount would be 104,000 for those 3 events. So, and what we do is when we do purchasing here, everything it has to be related to that purchase. Our city treasurer looks at that, so we cannot expense it. And any time we are buying items, we actually go out for quotes and bids for those items.
Yeah, Blaine, I had a hard time kind of hearing her, so maybe clarify.
Yeah, I think the main thing on it, how is it's not a discretionary, it doesn't go into a discretionary fund, it can only be applicable directly for those events.
Okay, so, but that $10,000 cannot be a sub piece as far as the discretionary fund within that event? So that, additional monies are there, but depending on particular requirements, you only approval to obtain funds out of that, for that event. Or is it just divided up, or is it just there?
Yeah, probably gonna have to get some direction on Mary Ann on that, exactly how it will be, how the total amount gets used, and whether it's a straight distribution between all 3, or can one of them use all of it, like, whenever we set up this budget, let's call it 104,000. Once we have 104,000 set up for these marketing events, so.
Now, what we can do is I can go in there and do a percentage per each one, like, out of the 63, there's a percentage for market, there's a percentage, and I can divide that other 47,000 in that same percentage, and I'll do a line item on there showing that, because you won't see it in the main budget document, but you'll see it in we have an include software that keeps all that, so we can document how much can go to each event.
Did you get all that out?
Yeah.
And I'm in support.
Okay.
And, whatever.
And I will support the additional 10,000.
But I think what we've got right now, Stephen, how is, so we want to have the flexibility to go, because right now 10 is just a very arbitrary number that we don't really know what that all can cover, or what expenses dealing with extra sanitation or spacing requirements, or what that's going to occur. So what we're looking for is the flexibility to move anywhere between 10,000 up to 47, somewhere between 10 and 47,000 additional to what we have here. What that does is it gives us the ability to go to the max of what we can spend on these events at that 10% per our revenue, anticipated revenue. So we can go up to that 104 from the 93 that we're at, or we can go, so we're gonna be somewhere between 103 total budget and 100 and 140.
It's safe. They don't have to spend it. It's spent if they need.
And I'm for that.
So again, I don't think we have an official action item on this other than the direction. Now obviously we'll have the ability to see the budget in its final form for us to go through and make sure that we're good with the way that it's put in there whenever we do have the budget review which that would come up in,
So we do another final presentation in August,
Okay.
and then we adopt in September.
okay.
Because we have to have a public hearing.
Y'all will see it again.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
you'll
we
see it
have-
twice.
We got a couple more bites of the apple on it. Okay? So, going back to our agenda on the individual items, sorry, got off page here. So we're moving on to number 7. Again, this is just gonna be direction, this is not gonna be an actual item, for approval. So all we're gonna do is have a motion for discussion. So it's discussion of and direction on utilizing funds from EDC operating account number 05-510-5211, marketing/tourism for the purchase of reusable shopping tote bags to promote Shop Helotes. So Glenn, Assistant Director, is gonna give a presentation on that, and make sure that you do have the visuals on this one because there are a bunch of them.
Can't be at two places at once, right? If y'all wanna pass it. That's the bag we did this last time, and I think we've used that for the last 3 or 4 years. So I know this item has been brought up a couple of times with some direction to create some different graphics, maybe even look at a full dye sublimation, which we'll go through the packet, try to make that clear. The first couple of pages are just taking design cues from what the board suggested, but trying to incorporate corn or the Texas, or so people got a better feel than just Shop Helotes, what Helotes is and all that kind of stuff. And I think Matthew mentioned to add the URL, right, directing people to the business directory site, which makes total sense. So there's a couple different ways of doing that with a one-color imprint, which is our cheapest option on any type of tote bag. There was one using, that's up on the screen now, that doesn't actually have this outline of the state, but just Shop Helotes, Texas. The logo itself would be, or the text imprint would be slightly larger. The next price increase would be to a 2-color, which doesn't come quite across on this screen, but the red doesn't really pop. Any color bag, I mean, that can be determined later. The thing is just doing either 2 or 3 print colors obviously raises the price, so that's another one. It has to go through the machine. We can talk anywhere from 10 to 30 cents per color. The next option. Don't crucify the designer. I did not want to spend time on this. This is a pattern I had from our Yestemoto
Oh, I'm sorry.
to try to get across what dye sublimation is. And there's two. There's
I love that.
that one because someone had mentioned something.
That's my favorite, Kathy.
Mine too, Stevie. Okay, let's hold
Oh.
that one.
It is an old sketch done by a Helotes resident, and we have 2 different versions of it.
What color is
I couldn't, the name is on there, I cannot read it. I think the mayor probably remembers. They were initially looking at, I think, doing a mural here at City Hall at one point. So we had a sketch. I just scanned it and threw it on there.
And the dye sublimation ones are mostly the plastic. I don't know if you've seen the plastic ones. They're plastic.
They're glossy. They're
Yeah,
coated.
the glossy one.
No, they don't actually have the little hole like that. They have it kind of like this.
Oh.
Yeah, so they have it all attached as one.
Yeah.
And they're glossy. We might,
The most-
with COVID and everything else, you can clean that a lot easier than.
You can wipe it down easier.
Yeah. But that's the product. It comes out better that way. They can do it on a canvas, a thicker canvas print, but they do recommend it to be in the plastic.
But I will say those bags are about 4 times the cost
Yes.
of what was passed around.
They're expensive.
So, I mean, yeah, they're beautiful, they're nice, and they would be unique to Helotes. We just wanted to kind of keep that in mind, it's not the same price point.
And that's why we say it's up to 8,000, because if we decided to do dye the dye one, that's the pricier one.
Is that Stevie's building back there?
It's what?
Is that Stevie's building in the background? I couldn't.
The, no,
No.
but I can name all the rest of them.
Yeah, Texas Grounds Coffee is on there, down at the bottom, obviously the church and our general store. Kind of what EDC is. This could even be a black and white, or it could be a color, some type of sepia or something. I mean, it's, sky's the limit on a dye sublimation.
And we'll definitely get 3 quotes from 3 different vendors to get us the best pricing.
There's even an example, I think it's the last page that says dye sublimation bag, and you can see that, I mean, there's a photo imprinted on one of them, so that it's really good quality. And you're not gonna,
I like this longer handled one.
Yeah, that's a more sturdier.
Okay, so Lynn, what is the direction you're looking for us on? What type of bag we would like to get quotes on, or just the design, everything?
the first one would probably be I'm gonna say the design, because if everyone really likes dye sublimation, then we kind of limit
Eliminate the other
ourselves.
ones, right?
You know, but you just take into the cost consideration.
How many of these bags are we looking at buying?
1,000?
1,000 bags. And what was the cost of those bags?
I want to say the total, the last quote we got was, the total was 8,000 for 1,000, correct?
That's what y'all have in the.
I think it was for
Yeah.
2,000, that quote may have been for 2,000, I'll have to go back and
Okay.
check.
Uh,
Some of them had minimum quantities for dye sublimation, so we're trying to find a
I see.
vendor. I've seen, you know, 3,000 or 4,000 on minimum, you know, first purchase on the dye sublimation. We're trying to keep getting that lower. I know we've got down to 2,000 on dye sublimation, might be able to get a little bit lower.
So I guess in the direction, do we need to tell you, maybe give you a couple of different options? Or that way you can get quotes in both and if anything else kind of compare to?
I think if we have any rough idea, it would help, you know, if we're looking at this bag that we have here, that kind of, that quote unquote cheap canvas or whatever we wanna call it, say $5 a piece, maybe?
Those are $2 or less.
Okay, and the dye sublimation,
They're gonna be 5 to 6.
okay, yeah, so that gives us some frame of reference
Yes.
Right.
anyway. Mm-hmm.
So it just depends on, if you pick the logo, you know, if you want us to go with the canvas ones, there's, you know, we can't do that one for sure.
No, I'm with,
Yeah.
I get that, no, I understand,
Mhm.
yeah. So, and our goal with these is just to give them out,
Yes.
at market days or carnival or,
And any business that wants them, we
Yeah.
drop them off if they want to use it as their shopping bag.
okay,
Say, obviously, the goal is for it to be used and seen
correct,
in the community.
yes, as a marketing, advertising.
Absolutely.
Yes. That to me means cheaper than, I mean, the dye sublimation ones are cool, don't get me wrong.
Right, but that's expensive.
That's, yeah, that's a fair chunk of change for us to be throwing around.
Price.
My first thought would be like the dye sublimation bags, would be really cool for the conference. You know, like what, that we talked about there in January, you know? Obviously, you have minimum runs, et cetera, but that's much more direct marketing, whereas this is more, in my opinion, but that's me. I think we could make, you know, a lot more of these, especially if the other bags are, you know, 3 times the cost at least. I think we could, spread a wider net, that's my opinion.
So, last time we brought this up, somebody, I forget who, had mentioned that if we had chosen several designs, we could have, sort of like how HEB has their multiple design and somebody apparently is collecting those, something like that. I thought that was a good idea, and I'd be up for that.
That does get pricey because every time we do a print set, they do charge us for that.
Yeah, it's around $50 for a setup fee.
How much?
50.
Well, depending on the color, depending
Yeah.
on, you know,
If you're doing dye sublimation, that
Yeah, just depending on what
Would
you
like
pick.
a 1 to 2 color setup fee?
So, I mean, I'll just preface all this, I don't wanna be too, lengthy, because I usually can go on for like 30 minutes at a time. What I'm doing for my company, I'm looking 12 months ahead, and I'm setting up to be super competitive by next March. And so, how I've been looking at our budget in the past and trying to be a little conservative, I'm now looking at this, and I'm looking at this as being Helotes versus Great Forest, Helotes versus San Antonio, and so around $8,000 for a few bags, and if people want to collect them, and we got to pay extra $1,500 to make that happen. So we get our URL out there, and we generate some interest via these bags with maybe a mix of some of the fabric and some of the and at least try out maybe that unique drawing there. I would be on board for that. I mean, I'll tell you, it's up to y'all, but I would definitely be willing to choose more than one design, mix and match, and increase that budget to give staff the opportunity to position us against the other cities right now. But, the only other question I had was, is this coming out of fiscal year 20 or 21?
20
Okay.
this year.
Yeah, we could do it this year.
And then, right now, as far as the budget goes, for bags, we've got that budgeted.
Yes, we do.
And the current budget is at how much? 8,000?
The actual budget, the budget for market, we have
We have a little over
leftover
20.
over 20. We have, and you'll see it on our updates, so we don't have to, on the market thing, we don't actually need to bring every item to y'all for approval. The shopping bag was a big thing because of the look and everything else. But we do, you'll see it on the updates, another idea that we have that we want to use some of that money for to help market our current businesses. So you'll see that in our update. I didn't get to put it in the slide because I needed to make sure we would do any design. So we'll show you that on the PowerPoint when I pull it up. I added it to the slide to talk about some other incentives that we want to do to help promote our businesses. We do have that 20, but we want to use some of it for this other thing. So I wouldn't like to have a direction to use all of it, but if you're looking at 10, 12, 15, that could be something that we can look at.
Okay. I'm not the most artistic person in the world, so I'm just saying that I like all these designs better than the current one, so, I think they're all very nicely done, even the color one with that looks like the flag is cool with the red, white, and blue. So I'm with Matthew though. I mean, I'd love us to see what some of these differences are, pricing and quantities, to really make an informed decision as far as like, all right, are we ready to spend this much more on bags or not? And see what we can actually fit within budget, kind of bang for the buck at this point. So really design wise, I don't have a
preference.
Yeah, I don't have much direction I can give you on that. I just know that they're better than what we have. And they look larger too, which I think is really important because the current ones, it kind of gets lost in the sea of the blue.
Yeah, it's a very small logo.
Yeah, and that's for that particular vendor, that was the largest they could make the imprint. And so that's something else. We had to find a vendor then that, can imprint. It's crazy that every one of them is different. Just
Yes.
depends on their machine.
Yeah, and there's a ton of different ones in those machines as well.
Yeah, because there's a lot of canvas, or square footage on the front of that bag that could be imprinted on. I mean, I would personally like to have direction, if I felt comfortable, to actually move forward with either one or two options.
Yeah, I don't want to come back with a lot of options because it starts getting really confusing. So I'd like to come back, give direction of how many y'all want to see pricing wise, or if you just want to look at pricing and then give us the artistic, you know what I mean? If it's not, if you're saying, okay, the dye is way too much, once we tell you exactly what that cost is, then of course we know that kind of detail is out. but we can say, okay, these are the samples of some of the other artwork, because we can actually have the graphic, some of the companies will actually help do a graphic for you, you know what I mean?
Right, okay.
And do that, and we can come back and say, this is what the 2 color is, or the 3, or you wanna tell us, okay, we're just looking at 2 color, or we're just looking at dye, or whatever, so we can come back with a price for it, or on 2 options. Just so we have some direction of what to come back with, because otherwise we can bombard you with a lot of information, so I'd like to narrow it down to what you would like to see quote-wise, and then, if one color is completely out, or no, I want one color, we just need that information.
So I'll tell you, as a marketer, the color thing might be a little interesting, because what we would like to see on the bag in terms of our design works, but there's actually, you can Google it, there's a color palette out there, like Whataburger Orange. There's Whataburger Orange for a very specific reason, to get more people to buy it. But, red, very intense purchase, but how it looks with, our city's color palette that we tend to have, for our branding. That's something we gotta take into consideration, whether we wanna keep that color palette with our current branding,
Right.
or if we want to use what's market tested and get a big bright red bag and say shop Helotes. That's, the input I have, from my experience. But in terms of a design, I like that, page.
One with the state on it.
Yeah, the state with the corn, and then.
The outline one.
Yeah, the outline, I like the one after that, and then if we had an option for the dye, I'd go with the artist, rendition of the buildings. I'd say that'd be my 3 options, and then see what the quotes come out to be, and go from there.
Do that. Do you have, like you said, a color preference on the bag itself? I mean, we don't need to, this now, but at least,
Yeah.
so I can show you visually.
I like the green,
The green?
not just because it's part of the color palette.
Well, and let me make that point pretty clear. Right now, the city EDC color, the red, white, and blue, that is our legitimate corporate approved color.
Really?
The green and yellow was something that was back in the 80s, and that was, honestly, it's been changed for over 10 years.
Okay, so we could go.
I just wanted
But
to put that
what
out
was
there.
once old is now new again.
Right, vintage is in.
So we can do it, some new red as a retro bag.
Some red, some white, and some.
Throwback, I like it.
Are they gonna charge us for samples?
I don't think they do for the 1 or 2 color, they do
Okay.
for the dye. Because it's a big process for them to do a
Because the
dye.
final product is gonna look different than printer ink.
We'll find out to see if we can get a dye made, you know what I mean? What that, if we can do it, then we can try to get a sample for you.
I'll tell you, the green visually goes well with that, artist rendition of the town there.
Yeah.
And, against the green backdrop,
It
I think anything else, would be very busy. That green complements it very well. The
does.
other,
Favorite color.
oh, that's tough with the blue. I know why HEB does it, especially with the Independence Day, totes they have. It's too busy, but then again, they got a whole selection, so if somebody's looking for that, they're on the outside of the bell curve, and they want that.
Mm-hmm.
Blue is not necessarily like, hey, go out and buy something kind of colors, but it goes well with the white and it pops. So that's my input, and I'll leave it up to
Yeah.
But we can go with a lighter blue instead of the darker blue. They do have a light, you know what I mean? If you feel the darker blue is a little too dark, maybe a brighter blue.
this,
Yeah.
There's
Yeah,
3
this
shades.
is more like royal.
that shade.
Yeah, more of a royal blue.
Yeah, there's actually 3 shades, at least 3 shades of blue on these bags.
Ron, did you have any input on any of the styles here?
I like them all.
There we go. In a better direction.
I would like your suggestion about the red versus orange. You know how attractive that is for people.
Stevie, obviously we know you like the one with the with Old Town picture on there. Is any other ones that you're fond of?
Well, I guess if I had to, no, I don't like any of the others. I'd really like to see the Old Town sketches in the laminate.
Okay.
Right, me too, in the winter. Good, she, yeah, that would look sharp.
Okay, so trying to put this all together, obviously I know we've got different opinions here, but it sounds like direction, and this is always you're trying to get direction. I think Matthew had the best. Is probably the lighter blue, like the blue we're seeing here on the paper with that white outline on it, with that white outline Texas. It'd be great if they could make a green version of it too, but you know, I understand if they can't, but you know, it's just hard. I'm not a very visual person, getting how the green is doing exactly what. And I think the second one, Matthew, you liked was the one color, the shop Lotus, or was it the red, white, and blue?
So the,
Where's that?
outline of Texas, the one on the back page of that,
Okay.
and then the third one was, the artist drawing.
Okay. We're probably gonna find that those first two will probably be very similar in price, and then that third one will be.
Right, they'll probably be under two is what we're looking at, under $2. It's the dye one that's gonna be more expensive.
Okay. And maybe just bring us information on what the minimum order size is. Luckily, these don't have dates on them, so we have to use our. You actually, you're going finally through. When did y'all buy those bags there, Matthew? Or Cliff?
A year ago.
Okay. You're coming to the end of it?
Yes, I've got one box left.
Okay.
And the only reason it's left is it's not sitting over here at City Hall for Marketplace.
Yeah.
We kept that as our stash of paint to trade shows or something like that.
All right, is that good enough direction on that item?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Very good, thank you for everybody's input on that. Again, we don't have to vote or anything, so it makes it even easier. All right, so the last item we have on individual consideration is the presentation of the proposed fiscal year 2021 EDC operating budget and discussion on and action on scheduling a public hearing. So this one we will, after Mary Ann goes through the presentation on it, we will have to have a motion for action as far as discussion and approving it to schedule for the next EDC meeting.
Yeah, as a public hearing.
Okay, so let's hear the good news.
Okay, so, this proposed budget was developed to be consistent with the mission, vision, and goals of the EDC. It provides a fiscal plan to accomplish high priority action steps consistent with our strategic work plan and allocate resources to provide business development through effective communication, supporting existing businesses, and recruiting new businesses. We are highlighting how the allocations of the Helotes EDC financial and capital resources are targeted to achieve the established mission, vision, and goals. As you know, that our main revenue is sales tax. That's the main source for the Helotes EDC. The current sales tax is at 8%, which includes 1/4 cent for street maintenance and 1/2 cent for the Economic Development Corporation. Now, 6.25 always goes to the state. So we only have 1.75 of that, rest to Helotes, and 1% goes to the city. Our proposed budget, we're projecting to collect $1.474767 million from sales tax. And what we did is we kept the estimate from last year to this year because we don't know what COVID is going to. Now, this last sales tax, we were very, very, very excited because it actually went up by 18%. Yeah, but overall, we're at a very minimal increase. I think it's less than 3% increase for the whole year, compared to last year. So these are, what we got in July is what happened in May. Okay, so we're always 2 months behind. I'm sorry, what we got in July happened in April? I'm sorry.
No,
is it-
May's correct.
May, yeah.
May, June.
May, June, and then we got in July, yes. So the revenue that we're actually estimating for this year is 1.592, just because of some of the increases that we did get. That is our estimate, but we won't know until we close our books at the end of the year. Our revenue comparison, in 2019, we had interest of 21,000 and sales tax of 1.4. Our estimated for this year, 20, is the sublease for the months that we signed for 900, interest of 15,000. It did go down. The rates were not as good as it was previous year. And then and then 1.5 for the actual sales tax revenue. The next page, we break it down so you can see what we actually got in fiscal year 19, what we adopted in 20, what we're projecting, and then what we're proposing. The 4 categories that we break it down is personnel, contractual services, commodities, and capital layout. If you go to the back attachment, the last one, that is actually the full breakdown, line by line, of what is in each of those. So it talks, the first top part talks about what the revenues that we receive from sales tax, mixed beverages, and the subsidies to the chamber, and the interest. And that total, and that's the total of the 1.4 or 1.5. And then what we're looking at is in salaries, and then our contractual services, any memberships, audit fees, school seminars, and you'll see at line 5211, it's the market and tourism, which is the 93.5, which we will change and increase to 140. And then commodities is basically office supplies, operational expenses, and so forth. The big program changes that we have is we are looking to leave 15,000 in there as a marketing and incentive tool, and that could be either a program that we're looking at or some different things to be able to, so we can show land use plans. The other increase, as we talked about in the previous item, is the marketing and tourism. At that time when I did the budget, it was at 63, and as per y'all's direction, we're gonna increase it to 140. Visitor center, we're leaving that in there. It was in this year's budget. We've decided to keep that in there to plan and evaluate a visitor center and look at the locations and so it could be a combination because we do have hotels tax, and so that could actually help with this. So it's not just EDC funds. Once we decide to develop this visitor center, if we feel that that's feasible. And the other one is the reimbursement agreement that changes each year. And so we're estimating that we'll pay out $600,000 to Texas Developers 380 agreement. The next slide, fund statements. Our proposed allocations for fiscal year 21 is 1.25 million, representing a 1.57 increase from current year adopted budget. The factors of the increase is the city events, the increase of the city office lease agreement. We've talked to Mr. Depchuk, and we are going to at least go up 100 each year for probably the next 3 years. That's what we're hoping to negotiate, and that's what we're projecting. And then, of course, the 380 agreement reimbursement, it increases by the sales tax revenue comes out. It's just a formula. The total fund statement is the revenue projected is 1.5, representing a 0.2 increase from the current year adopted budget. And will produce a net revenue of 236,000. This is a decrease from this year's, which was 16, but we do have a couple more expenses in there than we did this year, which is the city events and the marketing. The projected fund revenues and allocations, you'll see here, beginning balance is 1.29, and that's exactly what Kim put on her audit. Projected revenues is 1.59. projected expenses is 1 million, with reserved funds for capital, which was 811. Those are the three items, which is the, splash pad, the sidewalk, and the loan program. With a projected unreserved fund balance at the end of this fiscal year of 985,000. So next year, we'll start off with the 985, projecting revenues of 1.5, proposed expenses of 1.2. We don't have any reserve for capital projects minus the 811. You know, I mean, that's already been taken out from this past fiscal year. And so our estimated reserves at the end of fiscal year 21 would be 1.2 million. The next steps is to publish a public hearing, and then we'll have a first public hearing and the finalized proposed budget in August, and then a second public hearing and approval of the budget in September, and then it goes to council the next week for their approval.
Seems right.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mariana, for the presentation. You made it nice and easy for all of us that aren't accountants and
No kidding.
Very clear and concise, thank you.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Otherwise, I would have been going through that super small spreadsheet and probably going blind. But it looks like, you know, this is just my opinion on it, just looking at how really when you look at the fund balance is really the focus on, obviously here at the end of 2020, we have a decrease going from 2019, what we started with. Most of that though being the approved, the 811,000 that we approved for those
That's
three
correct.
projects. So you take those three projects in, and we actually have a much larger reserve balance than we did in 19. So 20, I think you are being conservative, which is good, right now in the times we are as far as what our revenue is gonna be from tax. The good news is, that we get back to about where we were, just a little bit below where we were at the beginning of 19. So that's, it's kind of we were able to spend some good money on some what we all here as a board thought were very good projects, are going to be very good projects. And we're gonna get back to when we have a good reserve so that we can actually have that back in our back pocket to do other things to promote Helotes, you know, whether it be through the city or through ourselves. So with that, I guess we can have a motion for all of us to go through discussion, or we can have just a motion for discussion and approval to post a public hearing. Is that the next step
Correct,
we have?
for the public hearing will be on August 19th.
Okay.
A motion for discussion and action, which item is it? Item number 8 as written.
Okay, I have a motion, do I have a second?
Yes, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against say nay. So motion passes. I look forward to the next presentation on it. I think we're gonna probably see much the same.
You'll see much the same, you'll just see the difference with that,
No,
and then,
I thought we were discussing it. I got a few questions.
Oh, sorry, sorry. Okay, that, you are correct. Since we had a motion for discussion, we then now can go to the discussion part. Go ahead, Matthew, sorry.
Sorry about that. All right, so, first question, the salaries, line item, that is strictly employees, or does that cover?
that's
the-
just strictly
Alright.
at one employee.
So the agreement we have with the city, is that the $15K that I'm looking at for managed services?
Right,
Okay, all right.
yeah.
And
I
then,
do wanna let you know that I did look at, increasing that only because I spend a lot of my time with EDC, and EDC, there, none of my salaries in that line, in the personnel, you know what I mean? Neither is the financial, neither is our PR, who has been actually helping with a lot of the PR stuff. And so I did come up with a formula of like about 25% of my salary, 5% of the finance director, 2% of HR, 5% of PR, stuff like that, to look at it. I decided not to put it in this budget because we were increasing the market tourism, but that might be something that I look at proposing for the next year, because I do know what it takes for city staff to help and support EDC. And it is a lot more than the 15. Not a lot, but it's not, you know.
Right, I mean, it's always good to have a formula that.
Yeah,
accounts for it.
and that's what we figured out, the time, a formula, I mean, it's hard to figure out every little thing, but we're like, okay, what is the percentage of time does these employees spend on actually supporting EDC?
Yeah, I think that's fair enough, because that'd give us something to look at and prepare for, and,
Exactly.
you know, it gives us the jumping off point like we did with the, chamber. and
Yeah,
taking that
to
calculation.
start off and look at that and to see if you feel that those formulas are justifiable.
So, I mean, you brought it up, so just very quickly on that, is it on the horizon, have you guys discussed it as staff? You know, when Glenn needs, you know, somebody there helping him out in the future, is there like a threshold?
I don't feel like at this point there
Okay.
is, we don't get enough contact with businesses to come in.
Okay,
The support I do is, you know, helping try to clean up this agenda, giving y'all more information that has been done in the past. I looked at y'all's past agendas and they weren't as detailed, I felt, or at least simplified for y'all to go over and understand. So I'm working with Glenn so that we can get that. Also, anything that goes, because I'm the executive director, I'm required to review everything, you know? So it does, I mean, even if Glenn does the back end work of it, I still have to look at it, approve it, get all that, get that information and so forth. So being in this job now for 5 months, I've come to realize a lot, you know, at least 25% of my time, if not more, but I didn't see the justification of 25 because it's not always consistent, you know, and I haven't done a whole year here yet. And that's why I didn't bring it up on this one, because I haven't been a whole year here, you know? But just in the 5 months, I mean, just even working with we did have when projects come up like the small business loan application, you know, program,
Right.
yeah, all that stuff. Because I also not only present it to y'all when those things get approved, I have to also present it to council. You know what I mean? And get their input when we're doing that, and if there's any changes or anything else like that. It's a true process. So, it does look at that, you know, our finance director does all, and our purchasing does all the checks, all the accounts payable. And then our PR, she wasn't involved as much, but after I got here, I said everything that we post on EDC, I want it on the city website to redirect to EDC, because if people don't know that website or don't know Shop Helotes and they just go to our city, and especially with the COVID, with all these loan programs and grant programs, we put it on there. Now we directed it back to the EDC. Click here and it goes back to them, back to our website. But the city gets more hits. You know, when we look at the analytical stats, the city website gets more hits, and so that is the, you know, she's been doing that, and also we have social media, more social media sites. So anything we put on Shop Helotes, we try to re-put on some of our Facebooks or Twitter and stuff like that, information such as that, so that more people, because we have a good following on our Facebook page.
And the only other question I had was on the design and conceptual thing. That project, is that something like what we see when we have a company trying to come in or somebody trying to build an office space? We want to start doing like a boilerplate for
Right,
those?
to see what
Okay.
the best square footage they can get on that land, what can be put, that type of thing. We do have to look for a different company, because the company we were utilizing is no longer in Texas. We were very lucky, I don't know what other word to use, to get the pricing that we did.
Okay.
You know, so the pricing will be more, with the new, vendor that does this. We just don't know what.
Those were my only questions, so.
Okay.
I can motion.
Yeah, does anybody else have any discussion items on it, or we got discussion over it? Okay. Al or Stevie, do you all have any discussion on this item?
I don't.
No, I don't.
Okay. Very good, I'm gonna rewind it then, since it just made it official, that we had a discussion. I'm gonna go ahead and, we've had the motion for discussion and, approval to put it on, public agenda for the next meeting, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No.
All those against say nay, so the motion passes. Officially. Really. So good, we'll be back here next time. All right, have is a staff report. Again, this doesn't require any action on our part, but it's a staff update from Assistant Director Glenn Goolsby on the Small Business Owner Assistance Program and the COVID-19 restrictions.
Yes, I know we had a couple of requests at the last EDC meeting, to get the information for you guys. And I thought we
Hold on 1 second, let me get to that
had
PowerPoint.
a little more time, to see how especially the loan program was received. And we can go back to the beginning, right? May 13th, Board of Directors created the zero interest loan program up to $20,000 for any sales tax producing businesses located within the corporate city limits of Helotes. That loan can be amortized over 39 months, but the first 3 months are deferred payment. So you actually have 36 months regular payments. We were able to get it officially launched May 27th through BCL of Texas. And we have the application on our website, but they receive all the financial documents, they review everything, they commitment letters and take care of everything. We're not actually, our staff is not actually processing this. To date, we actually have 3 businesses funded, 1 pending. And there may be some questions on the application rate, but it's definitely much lower than I anticipated. It can attribute, and there's kind of a slide on mitigating factors, talking with the business owners. Back when we were planning the loan program, most felt that COVID was going to be a couple months and then back to normal. Now that we see 5 months in, not sure what the next 6 months, a year looks like. They have concerns of taking long-term debt, which I don't blame them. Some of them, the current sales volume they're doing, they couldn't even cover the minimum payment for this loan. It's not that there's not a need, there's a desperate need, but most of them are trying to get grants if they can. The PPP, before I get it, yes.
We say 39 months, can we extend that? So for the companies who.
Well,
would.
before we make that decision or talk about it, we do have another announcement. It's not in the slide, but we're gonna talk about this. I just found out this morning.
Okay.
So let him go through that, and
Okay.
I'll tell you what the next announcement is.
Okay.
I will say another factor was Bear County decided to launch a grant program almost the same time we launched our loan program. And for Bear County, it's any business located within Bear County, includes Helotes. They initially started out with about 5.6 million, which ran through in 2 days. They later put an additional $6.5 million out. And the basic requirement is 1 to 5 employees, you get $10,000, and 6 to 10, 25. So free money. It was great. I don't have a list yet of the number of Helotes businesses that have received it. I guess I can probably tell you the chamber received $10,000 because it was open to nonprofits. And the way all businesses were selected, it's a lottery. So the application period was open for I think 2 weeks, and then they randomly selected. Don't want to be on that selection committee, right? But I have a feeling announcements just started happening last week on people who were awarded money, and they actually have a deadline, I think, at the end of the year for final announcements. So we'll see how that one rolls out. PPP, it comes, it goes. It's free money. It's payback money. Rules change every week. It is good news is that there was still money set aside. They changed the requirement from 75% reimbursed for payroll down to 60%. They've also extended the repayment terms. They've made it a lot more business friendly. They simplified the reimbursement forms, everything. But it reopened on July 6th, and it'll be open for a month. Here in Helotes, we had 388 businesses apply and get funds, which kind of blew my mind, 'cause we don't even have 388
businesses in Helotes?
No, we don't.
We're thinking a lot of that's with the ETJ and maybe some that
Oh, okay.
kind of in the county that put the Bear County counted them as Helotes.
Right,
Because
absolutely.
it's so close to our ETJ area.
Well, it's just like if you live in some parts of San Antonio, but your mail goes to the Helotes post
Yes.
office, you have a Helotes address, so. There may be businesses that actually are inside San Antonio, but their address is physically Helotes, and that's what they put on the loan.
That is correct.
That's what they live with.
Yeah, then we got, real estate agents and all the other
Yeah,
freelancers,
some proprietors.
1099s, yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody running out of their house.
Yeah.
Did qualify. So 351 of those businesses took in 150,000 or less. In that category, they do not tell us the name of the business or the address of the business. So no descriptive identifier.
Wow.
Any business that received over 150,000 up to 2 million, we actually have their information.
Oh,
We know
that's
their
good.
name and their address. So there was 37 identified within Helotes. I actually went through and looked every one of them up. Only 20 of them were Helotes. 17 of them were outside of even our ETJ. There's some of them registered. One business, I know there's probably going to be fraud in PPP. There's one business registered as a resident. It got $350,000.
Oh, wow.
And it's 2.5 times your payroll.
Yeah. It's a lot of people in your house.
It is. Then, we had the economic injury disaster loans are still out there and available. Then you have, I think they still have close to 60 billion left. Now the current state of everything. Clearly, we're all here today with face masks. That was approved a little over a week ago, if I recall. Time is really starting to mesh together. So now every person, walking into a business is required to wear a face covering if you cannot maintain a social distance of 6 feet. I believe most businesses are just requiring it, period, if you enter. We've had large gatherings are prohibited. As Mary mentioned earlier, some of them, I think it was the states, like 10 people. County initially had 100. Just it was a timing issue on that one. The county issued theirs first. Restaurants had to scale back down on their dine-in. I still know several here in Helotes that don't have their dining rooms open. They've chosen to keep those closed this whole time. The biggest hit in this most recent order was the bars. For the most part, they were ordered to close unless they have the capability to serve food and then you can do it curbside. And then we have a Wine 101, probably the best example, that they've been able to kind of react to this and adjust their operations. So one of their windows now is an operating drive-through window. So
That's a new way to do wine 101.
Yeah. That takes all the fun out of it.
sometimes you gotta be a little creative to be able to get sales. There's still a few businesses, I would say, in Old Town retail that are closed. The owners have chosen to stay closed because they don't feel comfortable dealing with the public, with the virus. For the most part, retail sales have seen the largest impact outside of bars. Still seeing as much as 80% decrease in year-to-date sales. Restaurants kind of bouncing around depending on the type of restaurant and what they were doing before and if they've made adjustments. A few of them that have really adapted quickly have been able to regain almost 90% of their sales. What that tells me is that they weren't doing a lot of curbside before. Now that's accounting for up to half of their business on sales versus the dine-in. And if they can keep that going, this thing gets back to normal, they're going to be in a much better position. Like I said, the bars are definitely struggling the most, and we've seen that even in our sales tax numbers. That's the only area that has actually decreased substantially. But it's a very small percentage of our budget. We don't usually get any more than $12,000 a year.
Yeah, I saw that.
Mixed beverage.
Right.
So overall, as of the couple days ago, July 10th.
Actually, I updated that slide, so
Let
I
me look over
increased
here.
it, yeah.
July
sorry.
15th.
That is as of a couple of hours ago.
We've got a little over 21,000 positive cases, 200 deaths.
In Santa Fe, Bear County.
Bear County.
In Bear County, yeah. Definitely not the lowest.
Right.
You can see the hospitalization rate. I know most are at or near capacity. Unfortunately, I even saw in the news today the refrigeration trucks, are being utilized. So,
ICU units usually only have like 6 pods in there. They're not built for the numbers we have.
right. And right now, there's only 13 positive cases identified in Helotes with one day.
So I added a thing, we wanted to announce that, we received 8,000 masks, that we are to distribute to the city of Helotes businesses. They were given by the county. We emailed all businesses that are in our database, and we're providing 100 per business. So far, 20 businesses have picked up masks. So they were very, very thankful because they are very expensive, and they were just very pleased to be able to get 100 masks.
What do they look like?
They're
The surgical?
they're like
Balloons.
The blue ones?
what he's wearing.
Yeah. Yeah, oh yeah.
What he's
Sorry.
wearing.
It's on your face. It's coming out already.
Okay, that's nice.
So Bear County has a warehouse full of PPE that they're using some of the CARES Act money to purchase. They've done their own distribution, and they had some left over, so they reached out to suburban cities for help distributing those. Because their distribution site was on the south side, so very few people out here wanted to drive that far for 2 boxes of masks. They asked for the first round that we only give 100 masks per business, and then we'll keep that for a couple of weeks, and then kind of repost for anyone else that needs it. But the businesses have been extremely grateful. Some of them have had challenges getting masks. Others said, the prices obviously are going up. It's like $30 a box for 50 masks. We had a program right before this one, about 2 weeks ago, where we were able to give out digital thermometers, masks, gloves, hand sanitizer, a gallon of it, and some sterilizing sanitation spray. And that was also through a Bear County grant. We gave out 70
Kids.
kits. Thank you.
Okay.
So this was one of the, Glenn actually designed this. And so we are thinking of some of the marketing money to be able to make banners for our businesses that are still being able to do curbside.
Awesome.
And so we will do it, we will put their logo on there, we will, get the expense and actually give one to the businesses that are curbside so that people know because,
That's great.
yeah. So that's why I asked us not to spend all the money on shopping bags.
Okay.
So these banners, so we like the idea of having kind of a uniform look right between the banners. So the border and the bottom stays the same. They can put whatever they want in the middle. So for a 3 foot by 5 foot banner, and I think that would probably be large enough to see from the street, is $35 for the banner.
How about those flags that stand up?
They're not allowed in Helotes.
There we
Never
go.
mind. 'Cause those
Let
are
me change the
big
city
flags.
ordinance.
Ordinances.
Never mind, Mayor.
This
How
one
much did you
is
say they were? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
35.
$35.
35? Oh, heavens, that's.
Yeah.
Pretty easy. The city's already waiving the permit fees
Nice.
for the businesses for banners.
How about installation? Where are you gonna put them?
I will not.
We will give it to them, and it's up to them if they want, as long, in our
Okay.
ordinance, it allows, as long as it's in a property,
Oh,
line, they can put it up. And what we did is we asked them to fill out, if they don't have a permit, application to fill it out, at least we know that they're doing that that they're putting banners up. We used to limit the time, and we used to charge them, limit the time, and limit, how many. We've actually stopped doing that
Sure.
because of this COVID, because they need that advertisement.
well, let's see, they should see that from the street.
They should.
People drive, well, I don't know, like the crack might being seen from the street.
Well, I think they'll probably have to figure out how they can get it up in front.
And they can
It'll
talk
be-
with, they have to talk to their landlords at
Yeah,
that point,
open,
because
yeah.
it's not, it's, you know, as long as the landlord allows it within that property,
Right.
because there's different landlords for each
Sure.
section. So if he does that and puts all of them up kind of, you know, or lets them do that, then
Right.
we don't have a problem with that.
Who owns all?
Philip. Yeah, so no, he's good.
Okay.
He needs his tenants to succeed.
Right.
Uh,
And it'll be clean, it all looks the same,
Sure.
and I think that, you know, instead of all these different colors and different banners,
Awesome.
you know.
Can we put that, is that gonna go up on our website also?
What we're not gonna actually just put it on, we're gonna actually contact them, we have an email address database, and so we will contact them to let them know that they can come and actually get a banner. We will help design it, pay for it, and everything else, and deliver it.
I think Catherine's question was like on the Shop Helotes website, will it show everybody that's open?
We actually have a database now that it's through a GIS type thing, and everybody that's open, and it tells it, when you click on the map, it says with the location, and it tells you if they're open, if they're providing curbside dining, and so forth. So we already have that up and going.
One of the services that we pay for, it's the demographics on our website. The company launched a free business directory especially for COVID, because things
Okay.
change so rapidly, whether you're dining, curbside,
We put that in the
delivery.
newspaper? I think that's adorable. I think that's a great idea.
We've had several posts on our Shop Lotus Facebook page too with it.
Okay.
You know, the page that really took off, it's not ours, but it's curbside. Trying to put the name back in
Oh,
here.
Yeah,
yeah,
Facebook.
Helotes Curbside.
Hello,
Yeah.
curbside, yeah,
Curbside
Facebook.
eats or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Helotes Curbside Eats, yep.
Although it's not just Helotes, so.
Right.
That's my own.
It kind of grew. One of the slides I don't have, I just got, so as you know, Bear County received CARES funds. They are to, we had to do an interlocal agreement, we just signed last council meeting. And basically, it was basically saying that, we will adhere to their requirements and so forth to be able to get these funds. We will do a budget, and then we will, turn in the reimbursements. One of the things that they had on their PowerPoint is, small business grants, because they use those CARES funds for it. So we're eligible up to a certain amount of reimbursement, which is $55 per capita, which is about $400,000. That is what Hello is now. We have to prove that we've expended it to get reimbursed back. So I turned in a budget. Our budget's about, out of other stuff is 81, but we're looking at 200,000 asking for reimbursement from the loans program. So what we would like to do is do a special meeting in August to bring back the loans program and to change it to a grant program. And so we have to bring it back because we're changing the scope of the program. We don't have to do a public notice on the expenditure, but we do need to change it back. So, and then we don't have to wait the 2 months to use the money is what it is, because it's already been allocated for small business. And so we're gonna change it to a grant. We have about 200, a little over 200. We thought 200 is good. And then we will give you some options on parameters on how much, if we're doing a 5, 10, 10 or 25, you know what I mean, combination. So we'll give you a recommendation and then y'all can propose to us if it's gonna change. And then what we'll do is then it will go to council for their approval for the next year. So just know that, if y'all can be, we'll look at your calendars to see availability that first week of, August and so forth, so that we can get this on the agenda. That will be the only thing that's on the agenda. So that's why I asked you, let's wait on the
Very
amortization
exciting.
thing, because,
Hopefully that'll help that 4 number go way out.
yeah,
All
and
388 businesses.
then
It'll be done in 2
we
minutes.
talked about our fund balance. Once we get reimbursed, that goes back into our reserves.
Yeah.
It really does. So I think that was the reason we didn't do a grant program in the first place, because we didn't want to deplete our reserves. But now we can, because we will be reimbursed.
I had one question just in the whole COVID, from what you mentioned earlier, Mary Ann. You said that there was, and we actually had a sales tax increase from May that we just realized now in July.
Mhm.
Where did that come from? We don't figure out what
Shots.
business is. Yeah, shots.
100% of our shots.
We didn't have a breakdown of that, they just tell you the total amount,
Okay.
we'd have to do a full report for that,
Okay.
but what we, just looking at it, just, you know, we had Walmart open when other retailers wasn't open, so you could shop at Walmart and still go to get clothes or get something else, you know, that type of thing. We also still have that Texas, the one, the 380 agreement that we have.
Texas, BMC.
BMC, so BMC, I think because they do a lot of mill work and so
Yep.
forth, so
The
they're,
housing industry.
we paid, yeah, so I believe that was an
I
increase.
think a lot of online ordering, so
Oh.
there was a shift in consumer spending, not as much as a decrease in consumer spending, especially in this market for the
Also, you
income
have to
level.
remember, a lot of people work from home, so a lot of our citizens, our residents, weren't leaving their direct area. Before, they'd be at work outside of Helotes and buying lunch, buying this, buying that. Now you're here, so you're going to utilize the restaurants here, you're gonna utilize whatever is.
Absolutely. All the teachers did.
So I think that makes a difference, and that those are some factors that we feel that made a difference with our sales tax.
Okay. We're good, hopefully it continues.
Can I ask one more question? I love that. I think that's great. Is there any way that we can even go one step further and like there's an electronic billboard over at Braun in 1604 that we can throw that up there? Something like that. Is that even a possibility?
Probably not.
Okay.
So LED billboards in general are not allowed?
No,
Yeah,
you're
just
saying
put it
one
on
that's
that.
already
Yeah,
there.
like, no, not us buying and building a billboard.
No.
As using the
Oh, you mean
billboard there.
the big one, I'm thinking the small monument one over there, you're
No,
talking about the big one.
No, I'm talking about
Oh,
to try and advertise to bring in some of those people that
Right.
aren't just local residents.
They
Right.
don't know
In
about
general,
the
just
track.
more shop local, shop local.
Correct, yes. But utilizing specific businesses to help us with
I
that.
think
You can reach out to them. Last time we did billboards, we were on 7 or 8 billboards in San Antonio. We spent $35,000.
Okay.
So I mean, I'm not sure just one location. I know the digital, the pricing's a little bit different. We had 2 digitals that time, and we were able to go for a few months on a rotating basis.
Purely an idea that I had just sitting there, so it's certainly not anything formulated, but I'm just trying to think of different ways to bring in.
Mail out right now would be great.
Right.
Something, say, da 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 da.
Yeah.
From the EDC.
Yeah, and we're working on some other ideas. And I've kind of tossed it out to Matthew too to get a little bit of thought. Because grants in general, you're giving them money, but you're not solving the problem.
Right.
And the problem is they don't have the revenue.
Mhm.
And a lot of our small businesses don't have online shopping. They don't have any type of mobile presence either. Whether you even want curbside. So it's even possible that we could look at incentivizing developing a platform for their businesses to use, some training on how to use it. And honestly, from the people I talk with, it'd be less than $3,000 a business.
So we're talking to a couple of vendors that do that, and so when we narrow down, when we feel like what's the best platform and a incentive program from the EDC, we're gonna bring it back to y'all, so it can be a project.
Yeah.
That
It's a great
that
idea.
you know what I mean, that, we can support, and we'll look at if we can take it out of what current marketing, if we have some funds in there. If not, it'll be a special project that, you know, we have to allocate funds for.
Do you think we could get any grant money to do that? Or does grant money specifically have to go to this?
It has to go straight to the grant, to the business. We can't reimburse ourselves for funding. It doesn't fit in the CARES Act funding category.
Well,
What
first,
would the chamber do?
Yeah.
Well, if you want to give the chamber a grant, for them to be able to afford to pay for it.
it.
Trust me, their revenue's down 28%.
I bet.
Yeah, anything with memberships right now, membership dues are struggling.
Yeah.
A lot of the chambers, a lot of San Antonio chambers are all, some of them are looking at merging just because they just don't have the membership, coming in to support it.
They have a lot of staff.
Yes.
on those big ones. A lot of overhead.
So it's, yeah, it's always the first thing to get cut when there's a decrease in revenue, right?
Absolutely, marketing.
Yeah.
It should not be the first thing cut when there's a problem. It's-
Which I love this because this gives us the opportunity to basically pick up their marketing budget for,
Okay.
which we should be doing.
So the few things I got, I mean, I love the idea, it's great. John's idea actually is timely. Advertising across the board is down. The digital billboards, we actually pick and choose which ones we want strategically, so that should be an option, it's up to who owns it. But I mean, if you got like, an extra 15 minutes, it might not hurt to, if you got the time for that, give them a call, because, they might be very amenable to any business right now. And yeah, so I got that, your contact, that vendor that specializes in Shopify reached out to me, and so he's gonna do his pitch, because you gave me the update on, or what your concept of that was, and yeah, I think helping some of the businesses that have a loyal following here in Helotes that have not had to modernize and get a good digital presence established. That's they're 5 years behind, and so they might be good now, even with curbside and a little bit of this, but we have absolutely no idea what is going to be the standard, from month to month, basically. I mean, strategically from a business perspective, 5-year planning is out the door right now, so whatever we can do to help them, stay afloat and keep in the black, I think is worth just looking at, just to have that conversation.
Yeah, I feel that right now with EDC, I mean, we've always looked at not just supporting but bringing in business, but with the COVID, that bringing in business is not a big option. I mean, no one's looking at relocating or resetting up, but I think our thing is definitely concentrating on supporting the local businesses that are already here, and so they can keep their doors open.
Thank you, Glenn.
We're down, I know Catherine just mentioned, we don't want to lose anyone. We're now down 5 businesses. In Helotes, 2 of them, in Old Town, and then 3 of them out here in the main strip, the main route.
All right, well, very good information that we gleaned out of this meeting for sure. Took a little bit longer on normal, but I think it was all well worth it. We got a bunch of good direction, and just good information that's really gonna help us make some decisions going forward. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I shall move.
I'll take 2 of them. So I'm gonna take that as a motion in a second, so we are adjourned. It's now 8:38.